Assalamu alaikum and good evening everyone. Welcome to the first panel discussion of the Social Intifada Palestine Youth and Family Market. Today's panel discussion revolves around youth activism, particularly from an Islamic perspective. I want to introduce our four panelists. Well, I'd like them to introduce themselves, please. We'll start from this side going that way. So, Tasneem, take us away.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm Tasneem Surti from Educators for Humanity.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm Iman Mahtaab from the PSC.
Salam, I'm Amara Gadra from the Palestine Solidarity Alliance.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Ibrahim. I'm from the Gauteng Provincial Legislature.
Jazakallah, guys. So we have a pretty wide range of panelists from, a broad range of places, and so I'm very excited to see where this conversation will go. I'm going to start off with a very basic question, and I guess Ibrahim, you can start off with answering. Basically, about identity, how do you think the Palestinian cause can shape a young Muslim person's sense of identity?
I can take it from my own experience of how it can shape your identity as a young Muslim, of it will drive you and give you a purpose of who you are as a person. It will show you what you stand for, and that you stick to your core values as a Muslim, sticking to your principles of what it means to be a Muslim, of being, one standing for against injustice, against any human. Mm-hmm. So it drives you to stand steadfast on anything that you do, from your salah to even your daily activities, your work or your education, and that, because you're standing for this cause of fighting for the people of Palestine. Mm. You cannot second guess it. So that identity is, you must stand for it, and it gives you that solid grounding and that solid footing with everything that you do.
Right. Yeah.
That I feel like that for me, that's how it gives young Muslims that identity.
Okay, yeah. So like through standing with the Palestinian people, it's helping you ground you in your faith as well.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Amara?
Yeah, definitely standing with the Palestinians and seeing how they themselves use faith to resist and to be resilient. I think what has also been really useful for me throughout this process in terms of my faith has been just to reconnect with the specific parts of Islam that tell you and really force you to be involved in movements for social justice. So the whole hadith about, if you see an injustice, change it with your hand. If you can't change it with your hand, speak about it. If you can't speak about it, make dua about it, but that's the lowest form. And so understanding how that test is literally one we're facing right now has made me, I think, committed to the Palestinian cause in a way that otherwise I wouldn't be as committed to. And just understanding that, when you see videos of people running from bombs, shouting Allahu Akbar, like the strength that they get from that saying, we should also get from that saying. And obviously we in our case are not running away from bombs, but we should be running essentially towards the people in order to help them from the plight that they are suffering. So yeah, it's definitely been difficult, and I think trying to accept the way the world is something that Islam really has guided me personally through, because things are really, really bad. But I know that justice is divine, and so we ask for justice here, but I know that even if we don't achieve it here, it will be served at least in the afterlife.
Yeah, subhanAllah, absolutely. And I think the hadith that you brought up is so very relevant in this situation, and I want to come back to it in one of the questions later. But Iman, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yes. Sorry. Oh, can you hear me? Am I audible? Okay. I think the most important link between things that we learn from Islam and what's going on in Palestine, I think the most important lesson through that is to never get comfortable with where you are. Because you don't own anything, you don't know what's going to happen in the next 2 minutes, in the next 2 weeks, in the next 2 years. I think it's just really important to make sure that you understand that everything that you have is temporary. And with that, you also understand that you should be doing everything possible, everything in your capability to fight for the next person as well as yourself. You know, never getting too comfortable with where you are and the life that you have. While there are people on the same planet as us that don't have access to the same things, in fact, not even on the same planet, like next door, you know, injustice is everywhere. I think Islam really teaches you to never get comfortable with injustice.
Yeah. So something slightly linked to that, we had some madrasa students come through the exhibition area earlier this afternoon, and there are some pictures of Bilal Khalid, and there's one really profound one of a family on a cart being displaced. And so I posed the question to them, what would you take, if you didn't know where you were going and you were told to leave your house because it was going to be bombed, what would you take with you? And these kids are tiny, they must have been 5, 6, 7. And I asked them, what would you take? I was really impressed with their answers, because it was, one of them said, your Quran. One of them said, my mother. One of them said, food, and your phone to keep in touch with family. Like literally they said that. And I was super impressed, because they're so young and yet they were able to give such really relevant answers, despite not having to, alhamdulillah, not having to go through any sort of injustice like that. And I think it was a cute little moment with the kids. Yeah. Jasmine.
So I'm going to pick up from where Amara left off with the hadith. And, you know, just disliking it in our hearts, that's the lowest level. But we can't be comfortable at that level and staying there. You know, our deen reminds us that the oppressed have a right over us, even if they live thousands of kilometers away. You know, standing for Palestine is not just political, it's spiritual. And it all comes down to, what are we going to answer when Allah asks us, what did you do when you seen this injustice?
So leading on from what you've just said, how do you think mosques, schools and communities can make space for this activism in the youth group? Who wants to start? Iman, go for it.
I think the first thing that we need to focus on is not being so comfortable and rigid in the way that we live. We need to be willing to have open conversations like this, not just about Palestine, you know, about each other. You know, you need to connect with people on a personal level, because I do find that when you connect with people, when you really sit down and listen to someone, you learn so much from them. I mean, the example that you gave a few minutes ago about the madrasa children, I think the most important thing that I took away from that was the emotional response. You know, very often we think that emotions are something that makes us weak. It's something that we need to push aside to focus on other issues. But I think kids have it right, where the first thing, their first response to anything is an emotional response. They feel more deeply because they aren't so guarded and they aren't so traumatized by the rest of the world yet. Well, most, I hope.
Yeah. So how do we make sure that mosques and family and community spaces make sure that sort of translates up into the older youth? Ibrahim?
So I'm going to take it also from my experience again and what I've seen on social media. There's a guy from Lens, Anwar Chetam, and he has started this thing called Islamicity. And he's engaging with youth, the early youth, late youth, and even older generation of it doesn't just start with, it's not just Palestine and international like Sudan, Congo and that, but there's also social injustices that take place in your own community.
Absolutely.
And that is where you sort of bring in that activism to youth, of where you start from home So similar to taking into relation of where charity begins at home, of you need to take care of your neighbor behind you, next to you, your entire neighborhood. And through the mosques getting involved in sort of, okay, they don't like the word politics, but saying involved with local issues, local community injustices or local problems. Like when the electricity goes off for no apparent reason, how can the mosque assist? How can they advocate to say city power, come put the lights back on, come fix this? How can they get involved when families go without water for a few days? Because it happens in many communities within Johannesburg and across the country. So I think mosques should get involved through local social injustices and local community issues and that. And I think that's how they engage the youth into the spirit or the sort of concept of activism.
Yeah, let me add. So I agree with Ibrahim that mosques, and to a large extent, I guess the ulama doesn't like the word political, and that's maybe a thing we should ask, like why? Because I think I'm going to be provocative here, but everything is political, including Islam. I mean, if you look at something like Hajj, for example, you might think, oh, that's a purely spiritual thing, but the very act of needing to move, to migrate, was based on politics of the Prophet ﷺ stand. So everything is political, whether we like it or not, whether we want to call it politics or not, it is affecting us, and therefore it is political. And mosques really have the ability to be a space where communities can organize and mobilize, and I think they should be leveraging that more. So obviously the salah that happens in a mosque is very important, but salah is not the only part of being a Muslim. The activism that you're supposed to be getting from your community is something that the mosque should really provide a space for and guidance for as well. So a panel discussion like this, for example, happening in a mosque, maybe in the Jumu'ah lecture, for example, that type of access to understanding how people and young people specifically need to get involved has to be taken to the spaces where they go, and the mosque is one. At least people are there on Fridays. So I would say Jumu'ah lectures need to be a mobilizing tool as well, and I'll just give credit to Masjid Al-Quds in Cape Town for doing that really, really well. I mean, I'm sitting here in Joburg, but I watch their videos and I feel inspired to take action, and they bring guests like Naledi Pardo to their masajid, and that's really what we need more of, so that we can understand that not only is it easy to link Islam with activism, but it's actually a necessity.
Anything you want to add?
I'm going to take a different shift on this. So, Anwar Jetam, his sister Raisa is also part of Educators for Humanity. Raisa and I, sometimes it would just be the two of us standing with our young kids outside McDonald's, picketing. And my eldest daughter actually, Rania, she's 5 years old. And you'd hear her going, with the chants and things. And I want to say that it starts at home. So the one evening we're watching Sarafina, and there's this one scene, Sarafina was backed by, the movement backed by the youth, and she sees this scene where this young boy approaches this elderly lady for buying Omo, because Omo was a Unilever product, a boycott product. And he reprimands this elderly woman, and he throws that Omo box on the floor. And my Rania then asked me, Mama, why is he doing that? Is it because that box is supporting a genocide? So for her, genocide, apartheid, all of that is under one umbrella. But she understood that, and that's because of what she's been exposed to. So it starts from home. As an educator, and also what Amara is saying, everything is political, including schools. We can't isolate that. Our curriculum teaches us about slavery. It teaches us about South African history. All of that is political. And so we should be able to, our kids in our schools are witnessing this through social media, we should be able to make that connection. We're not like a bubble in isolation. We shouldn't be isolating issues. It should be interconnected. So yeah, schools should also be a space where this comes through.
So we've sort of touched on the fact that there is a lack of youth activism and youth involvement, particularly in the Muslim community. Why do you think that is? Number one, and number two, how do we go about addressing it? Apart from using masks and it starts at home sort of thoughts. How do we get the youth to be more involved in activism? Yes.
A lot of young people care deeply. Let us start with that. We see it in their posts. You can hear it in their conversations. But actions feel scary because you're worried about the backlash. You think, I'm just one person. What difference am I going to make? The truth is, every big movement is a combination of small action, like compiled. A boycott pledge may seem small, but think of it as many schools pledging boycotts, and then a community, and then a city. That's powerful. Caring is the spark, but action is the fire. Look at PSA Youth League and their weekly pickets. Look at MSA and the events that they have. It's truly inspiring, actually, to see the youth, partaking in meaningful activism. So it's not all doom and gloom,
Yeah, thanks for that. Iman.
Can I offer a vastly different opinion?
Sure. I mean, you do come from opposing areas of teacher and student. So.
I think, so the first thing I'm going to do is try and make excuses for as many people as possible. I'm sorry if that's rage baiting. So I think a large part of the problem is that most of the things that we see and the things that we read are, things that you find on TikTok, on Instagram. It's through a screen. So it becomes easier when you feel any sort of emotion, when you feel some type of grief or sorrow, you just scroll past to the next thing to feel better, and it works, So I guess that's where I feel like there's a little bit of, I'd say, apathy, maybe intentional, but I'm hoping not. So there's that. And then with regard to action and translating how much you care into the action that you take, I am going to use a very specific example that I made reference to earlier. Today, a group of people had a picket outside, further down the road from Wits University on Empire Road. Now, I was part of this picket, and before leaving the university, I approached a group of Muslim students, MSA students, Wits MSA students, and I invited them to the picket as well. I said, we're having a picket from now till about 4:30, join us. And I kid you not, out of a group of 10 people, all 10 of them looked at me like I'd grown 2 heads. And then one of the men that were there looked me dead in the face and said, no, I'm tired. So I think it really just, an approach to solving that problem, I think, is we need to start radicalizing. We need to push people into these uncomfortable conversations and force them to face the reality of what's actually going on in the world. Again, I think we all feel a little bit too comfortable with the lives that we have and where we are. It's easy to just scroll past, and it's easy to ignore any little pang of guilt that you feel. But we need to push past those feelings. We need to feel sorrow, and we need to feel grief.
Thanks, Emma.
Yeah, I think even from an Islamic perspective, like I'm going to use a phrase that my family always uses, like all of this is dunya khutis, right? So if you're scared as a young person to protest or to, make a big statement because you're worried of how am I going to find a job after this, or what if like I have a sponsorship deal and they're going to drop me. I mean, I'm not saying be reckless, but at some stage you do have to understand that you are failing the test then, right? There's a bigger test that's happening here, and it might be asking you to be uncomfortable. It might be, I mean, you guys were saying some of you haven't been on panels before, but you're here now because you care about Palestine enough. So the moment might ask you to do something that you're not comfortable with. That doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. And I think it's too easy to just walk away and say, someone else will do it. I don't have to pick it because Iman is going to be there, so it's fine, I'm tired, I'll go sleep rather. And that's, I think, something that, it's also something that's engineered, right? So like in the apps and in the general, in movies even, like it's taught to you that you shouldn't be political and that you must leave that to the experts. But it's something that we have to resist, and so like PSA Youth League, for example, how we've tried to grow has been by making it as easy as possible for people to be involved. So literally, if that means you only have 1 hour a week, come to the picket on Fridays outside McDonald's on Oxford Road. That is all we're asking for you. Often people will come and then we'll see them again, and we'll see them at other events, then they'll message and they'll say, how do I get more involved? So people do need to see that, oh, actually, I feel different when I'm active in the space. And so when we have events, it's good to do what you did. I mean, even though you got rejected in this case, please keep doing it, because that is exactly what is needed. And hopefully, even if one of them comes to the picket, you can slowly build that up. At the same time, obviously, it is urgent. And so I think we do need to be a bit harsher on people that are, saying, that's not my problem, or I'll just repost something and then my activism's done. We can maybe talk about what that harshness means now, but yeah, I think we do need to be really, arguing about why are people not in the streets all the time. When I mean in Palestine 2023, there was the young people of Gaza that made a conference themselves, like the children's conference. I'll never forget that image. And you would think, okay, these are like 6-7-year-olds begging the world to intervene. If you are like 18 or 19, you should understand that means you as well.
Yes.
So yeah, I think we can maybe chat about how to be harsher in a productive way.
Definitely, we'll touch on that. Anything you want to add, Ibrahim?
I just would like to add that I think why the youth of today are not sort of involved in activism and are activists is because I feel like they're all in silos. They see like everything they witness it, social media on the screen, like they scroll past. There's nothing sort of, so youth like it when it caters to them. It should cater to them. It must be for them. It must be about them. And I feel like using sort of that psychology sort of will bring them to engage into the platforms and talking about Palestine and talking about social injustice. And I'll take it to, I think it's the PSA Youth League doing the poetry night quite soon, I think. Okay, so yeah, that. Sort of people, the youth like that. It's common, poetry is common amongst the youth, art is common amongst the youth, like the exhibition. Art is, the youth should sort of create their own platforms, using their own voices, using their own ideas to advocate for Palestine. Because there are various ways to advocate. If you look at all the history, there were artists, there were people who were on the front line, there were people who helped with logistics during apartheid. And famously, I'll take it from one of the stories I learned about Intifada, was of I think it was the 1956 march, the Women's March, was women were on the forefront, but he was helping behind the scenes through his vehicle, because he had a vehicle, and he was, helping them with logistics and moving things around. So there are various ways and there are various platforms of how the youth can get involved. It just takes them and their mindset to take that first step forward. You know, they have to push themselves because you can't second guess it. You can't worry about, as they said, you can't worry about what are they going to say. Am I going to be cancelled? You must just take that step forward and push for it and advocate in for as best as you can. So yeah, I'll just let that.
So, what are your thoughts on how we can be harsher, like Amara said, but also get over that fear of cancel culture? Because I think in today's generation, that's a real thing people are scared of. Because I think standing up for something like Palestine, it's not wrong, but I think people are, or the youth can be afraid of the backlash they might receive from their friends who are not pro-Palestinian, or the larger community. How do we merge those two?
So, I think cancel culture is tricky because on one hand it can bring attention to harmful behavior, and then on the other hand it can scare people into silence instead of encouraging them to grow. In the anti-apartheid movement, yes, there were boycotts and public shaming of institutions, but a lot of the work that was done was by educating people until they understood that you can't be neutral. So if we want a movement that grows, we're going to have to leave space for people to change their mind and join us. Yeah,
It's a tricky one.
It's not going to happen overnight over
Yeah.
one conversation.
Yeah.
It's a series of things that need to take place, but we have to leave that space.
Yeah, we need to start that ripple effect, hopefully. Yeah. Anyone want to add anything? Ibrahim?
So I just want to add that through social education and community engagement, and that is the youth. Okay, I can't say what the harshness should be in that, but we should. I feel like the starting point is we should call each other out, call your family out. You know, don't let make a big scene. Just speak to your family. As was mentioned earlier by one of the panelists, it starts at home. So tell your family, ask them, engage with them as to why do you still keep buying this product.
Yeah, why is there coke on your table?
Why do you, but that also links back to the first question you asked us was our identity. You need to have your identity rooted, you need to have your intention rooted and firm, and always renew it. Say that I'm standing for Palestine, I'm standing against the social injustices within the world, because it's a bigger picture, it's a bigger test, as Amara mentioned, it's a bigger test for the Akhirah. This is your test. You need to make sure that you stand, make your decision now. Don't second guess it, put your desires aside. Yes, it's a difficult thing, but this is the test. This is what makes you, the best person you can be, the best human, of standing firm and calling out when you can, and in the right manner, obviously, doing it in a respectful manner, not just shouting and then shouting, causing a scene, but then also not remaining silent. So in this space of cancel culture, you always have to pick your battles in that, because sometimes you always want to pick the battle and then it ends up being adverse effects, and then you've really lost the point there. So you need to just take it step by step and have your identity and hold yourself accountable first and foremost before you do anything else. So I just feel like if you start with that identity, and then that's how you break that fear of cancel culture from that identity.
It's a really nice link. Thank you. Amara, Iman, anything?
So I think with regards to not specifically cancel culture, but the fear that people feel about saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing or advocating for the wrong thing, something that really does help with regards to that issue specifically is seriously putting some attention towards solidarity spaces, and making personal connections within solidarity spaces. Because something that I've noticed with different people that I've approached and spoken to is that they don't feel comfortable enough to approach these spaces. They don't feel like they have a foot in the door. They don't really know anyone there, so they're scared to ask questions. So I think it really is important to reach out to people, to sit down and have a conversation, interact as much as possible, and then, as was said before, it really does start at home, in your own circle, with your own friends. If no one else shows up to something, at the very least, you know that you can count on the fact that you will be there and your circle will be there. And within that, you invite people to sit with you, go out on a limb, be just a little bit social and a little bit friendly. I know that's very high and mighty for me, but just really go out of your way to invite someone to sit with you and have the conversation, talk to people. I really do think that's important.
Okay. Amanda?
Yeah, I'll just add something small. So obviously, speaking about things is maybe daunting for some, but I would encourage people to start with a very basic thing which we're seeing now, which is wear your keffiyeh. Like, that's the simplest thing you can do if you're trying to get into how do I express my solidarity for Palestine. Change your profile picture. Like, it's very small things that you can do, and slowly you'll realize, oh, okay, actually I'm more comfortable now because I've, exactly what Ibrahim said, I've reinforced my identity. And I think for those of us that are already involved in the youth movements and in movements in general, it's maybe on us as well to not just call out our friends, but to literally say, I'm going to those protests, here's the details, do you need a lift? Do you want a t-shirt to wear? Like, really basic offers. There's a lot of groups I've seen, mainly creative groups, that have literally said, we'll carpool together. We've never met each other ever. You in this group, I don't know who added you, meet me at this spot here, and we'll all drive together to Pretoria, for example. So really basic reaching out like that, I think is maybe something that we need to do a lot more.
Yeah. You want to add something?
Yeah, just one last thing, linking it to the two previous panelists of putting more emphasis on the social accompaniment, what you said, or like the groups and that, and then what you're saying of the carpooling and that was, I feel like within the youth itself, there's no unity. So there's no connect between the youth don't work together. The youth, I feel like the youth is, okay, I'm in my section, I have my clique, I have my philosophy of life. You do you, and you continue doing you. I don't want anything to do with you. So I feel like there's that big disconnect within the youth and with even in the Muslim community. We are not united. We are all in silence. We are all in our own sort of our own area, and we don't want anything to do with someone from a different area. So key to it would be bringing that unity. Like, I don't know you, but I'm gonna pick you up. Let's go. Stand together. Bring more people. Stand together. That's the thing. The key to moving forward is unity, and that's how you bring in a stronger identity, and that's how you bring in your advocacy and how you make it stronger. Because during apartheid, they stood together. They were, although you could see, like, okay, my parents always tell me was, you knew who your enemy was. Like, in today's time, you don't really know. So, it's difficult to tell who, but you always have to just push for the unity and just always be sincere and honest and as raw and authentic as possible through all your engagements. And through that, that's how you end up finding the right people. They'll just naturally gravitate towards you. Or if you start to worry about, okay, what's my friend's gonna say, that, then that's where you're already sort of veering off the path of that. So just be authentic, be yourself, be honest, and then the right people will come, and that's how you move forward.
Yes, inshallah. So okay, we've been talking a lot about struggle. To close off, I thought you guys could maybe talk about one time where you felt like you were heard in this Palestine struggle particularly? If you can think of anything, please share it. Okay, Amara.
Yeah, I think it was a fairly recent protest. I think the one actually that Social Intifada used in the advert for this panel, which was the Soweto March.
Yeah.
So that was incredible because I think it brought together different communities, and that's, I think, also what's been lacking in the Muslim community is just an isolationist view. You know, we're only going to speak to Muslims, we're only going to speak to Indian Muslims even.
Yeah.
And so really that march was organized by people from Soweto. Salam Media was like pivotal in organizing that march. And it brought together so many people, which I think was it was good to like reinforce the idea that Palestine is not a Muslim issue. Sure, most of the people happen to be Muslim, but we should care when that happens anyway.
Yeah.
And so we should be speaking a lot more about TRC, for example. I was going to say Sudan, but Sudan's also Muslim.
Yeah.
And we don't really speak about it much because I think because there's still racism there. So what I think, like, that Soweto march was amazing because it really challenged people to see this is what solidarity means. It's a very practical thing. It's not a thought experiment. And I think after the talk that I gave there, the amount of people that came up to me but mentioned different things that I had mentioned and said like what it meant to them, that really touched me because I think for a lot of people, like for maybe a lot of black people in the country, they might not have really engaged with a relatively young Muslim girl that's, you know, explaining their struggle.
Yeah.
Or, you know, someone that's from the DRC, you know, understanding, oh, okay, this is an Indian girl. Like, you know, that idea of actually other people care about your problems simply because you are a human being. That was a really like powerful moment for me, and I hope we have a lot more of that. I hope we have a lot more of, you know, mass-based protests where we must understand that we live in South Africa. We don't live in India, you know, or in some other Muslim country. I don't want to name any because there's a lot of complicity there at the moment as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was really like a moving moment for me, and I hope we can all have more of those.
Yeah. Ibrahim?
I had an experience when I was still at varsity about 3 years ago. We were with the MSA and we decided to do a Palestinian march on campus. And we were just walking about, chanting everything, and then we had like a small picket on like the embankment there. And a few of the students came to ask, what is this about? Like they had no clue what was happening. And I feel like, you know, about five people, five people came, and we just sat down and we had a conversation, and we were just talking from the history from 1948, even that before that, they're just linking it all the way till now,
Right.
and why we're doing this, why we stand for this. And you know, they joined us. We had one later that year, and they joined us. They brought their comrades.
Yeah.
They brought like, you know, it got to the point where more people started joining us.
Right.
And then it even led to the point where I think, I might be wrong, through that, I think we had someone who became interested in Islam.
Yeah.
And they started coming to the JK and engaging with us more, to the Jamaat Khan and engaging with us more. So I feel like that's where, well, not our scene, but like the cause, what we did as MSA was seen and was, you know, was heard. And it sticks with me to this day. So
Yeah. Maybe there's many more moments like that, inshallah. Iman?
I actually have two. I'll talk about the most recent one. It must have been last week. I think we had a documentary screening on campus, and the documentary was, I can't remember the name of the documentary. Anyway, it was about the role of women in the first Intifada, and I found it extremely interesting. In fact, I think I might force my family to watch it. And after the documentary screening, there were about 10 people there. We all sat down and had a conversation about what we thought was a pivotal moment in the documentary, what we thought was important. And within that conversation, there were, I think, more men there than women. And at some point, one of the other PSC exec members turned to me and asked me, you know, you were in the encampment last year, and I think that was a very revolutionary thing to do, you know. How did you feel about that? And it became a very informal interview, but I spoke about how we felt like at the time we were so exhausted, we were frustrated, we were upset, we were angry about everything that was going on, and these feelings weren't necessarily reciprocated by our current circle. So we kept branching out to find people that felt the same way, that were just as upset and frustrated and tired, and that was basically what I spoke about. That's why we started the encampment. That's what kept us going through the encampment. That's what kept the movement together after the encampment. I was really just talking about the amount of burnout we all felt, the exhaustion that we all felt throughout that period. Yeah. And when I finished talking, I think about 3 to 4 people just looked at me and they said, do you realize how absolutely impressive that entire thing was? Like, do you realize how powerful that was and how inspiring so many people found it? And I think that I will think about that for years to come, because I really do think that was something we don't tell each other enough. You know, you're doing well. I think there's always more to do, but you're doing good.
And I think it's so funny that was the comment, because you watched a documentary about how women were so pivotal in the first Intifada, and similarly, women were so pivotal in setting the encampment up, because it was I think purely women led. It was women who planned it, women who set it up, women who were there most of the time. So I think it's a nice little parallel over there. So well done.
Yeah. I think my experience, my most recent experience, was just yesterday.
Oh, amazing.
So we had a SATU meeting. SATU is the South African Democratic Teachers Union, and they opened up a platform for me to speak on behalf of Educators for Humanity. And you know, the message that went across was for us not to forget that during our struggle, during the apartheid time, the Palestinians are friends of ours, where even salaries were given up to fund the anti-apartheid movement. Yeah. And boycotts were implemented internationally, you know, to cripple the apartheid economy. And our friends are in trouble now, and we need to be there. And so I think the message that we were, you know, giving across was that our action can be very simple, PDS. Yeah. And just explaining that, because not everybody understands the importance of boycott, divest, and sanction, and the impact and how powerful it is when we all come together. Because yes, ideally, if the government said we're not going to allow sales of Coca-Cola products, that would be amazing, but that's not what's happening. Yeah. So we need to all come in our small spaces, and together we make an amazing impact. And I think that, you know, drawing inspiration from the apartheid struggle to how the BDS has formed and how our role, you know, what role we can play in assisting our Palestinian friends through boycott, divest, and sanctions. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the presentation, you had comrades coming through to ask, would it be possible for you to provide us with a simple list of targeted boycotts? And then, you know,
that's great. Yeah, no, that's incredible.
Yeah, and it starts somewhere, because you know, our message needs to get mileage. Yeah. So, like Amara was saying, not just in our small or comfortable spaces, but in spaces that we may not be familiar with, because those teachers sitting there are taking that home and into their communities.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I want to make one comment, and I think all of your moments of when you were seen all link back to everything you guys have said about what we should do to reach the youth. And I think that's a really nice full circle moment in that, you know, it's working in small little spaces, but it is working, and hopefully it does eventually reach to greater spaces where we can make a really, really big impact, and hopefully the genocide and occupation will come to an end, inshallah. So thank you all for your time. It was really, really great speaking to you and hearing all your thoughts and opinions on this. Jazakallah khair.